Carl Jung suggested that you can understand someone's real character by paying attention to just two subtle indicators. Not their polished words, not the accomplishments they proudly display, and not even the behaviors they perform when they know others are watching. Jung observed that two particular psychological giveaways consistently reveal who a person truly is beneath the mask they wear. And the striking part is that most people express these signals without having the slightest awareness of it. You can imagine yourself seated across from someone you thought you had figured out, a co-worker, a friend, or possibly a partner. They seem sincere, steady, maybe even admirable, yet something feels misaligned. An instinctive tension lingers, as if there's another layer behind what they present. Jung spent decades examining what he termed the persona, the social mask crafted to conceal deeper truths. Yet he concluded that regardless of how refined or intentional someone's public identity becomes, two psychological indicators inevitably reveal themselves. Once you learn how to recognize them, you stop being deceived by a carefully curated personality. These insights aren't advanced psychological assessments. They're simple observational tools that expose profound truths about human behavior. And by working through them, you become skilled not only at understanding other people, but also at noticing aspects of yourself you may have ignored or pushed aside. This is where Jung's ideas become genuinely unsettling. These same psychological markers that reveal the hidden nature of others also illuminate the parts of yourself you have avoided confronting. Many people assume they can evaluate character based on charm, kindness, confidence, or visible success. But Jung understood that all these qualities exist on what he considered the performance layer. This layer includes the deliberate behaviors individuals display to fit their roles or meet social expectations. The authentic self exists beneath the performance. And Jung discovered that no matter how much effort someone invests in shaping their outward presentation, two psychological patterns show up that cannot be masked. These patterns come from the unconscious, which operates outside of deliberate control. Because they aren't managed or filtered consciously, they become reliable indicators of who someone genuinely is. Jung wrote that thinking is difficult, and that's why most people prefer to judge based on superficial cues. Yet the judgments rooted in surface impressions are frequently inaccurate. True insight requires paying attention to the unconscious patterns that slip through the cracks when the persona falters. One of Jung's most impactful observations was that real character becomes visible not through the traits people intentionally display, but through what they unintentionally express. The first psychological reveal emerges whenever someone's guard drops, during stress, irritation, insecurity, or moments when they react emotionally instead of thoughtfully. Jung called this first reveal the shadow, the part of the psyche containing the traits we reject, suppress, or deny within ourselves. This first reveal can be understood through what can be called shadow mapping, the practice of identifying someone's suppressed qualities by watching who and what they criticize most intensely. Jung said that until a person brings the unconscious parts of themselves into awareness, those parts will shape their life, and the person will interpret the resulting patterns as fate. This unconscious influence becomes especially visible in how people judge others. When someone attacks or criticizes another person with strong emotion, the reaction often represents projection, casting their own hidden qualities onto someone else. What we respond to most fiercely in others often represents something unresolved within ourselves. Jung viewed projection not as a deliberate behavior, but as an automatic psychological process. The stronger the emotional charge, the closer you are to observing the person's suppressed traits. Here's an example. Imagine David, an accomplished architect proud of his honesty. During meetings, he routinely complains about his co-worker Marcus, calling him overly slick or insincere. His tone sharpens when Marcus is complimented. He stiffens when Marcus speaks confidently. But from Jung's perspective, these reactions reflect David's inner conflict. David secretly wishes he could be more socially fluent, more persuasive, maybe even more charming. But because he associates those traits with being false, he suppresses them. In rejecting those qualities within himself, he becomes highly reactive to them in Marcus. Jung believed that condemnation does not liberate, but instead restricts. David's frustration with Marcus isn't about Marcus, but about the part of David that longs for expression, yet remains unacknowledged. Shadow mapping works so consistently because judgments expose the conflicts inside a person's psyche. What they criticize most intensely often represents rejected abilities or fears that they haven't come to terms with. This dynamic doesn't only appear in negative reactions. Jung also noted that people project positive qualities they are afraid to recognize in themselves. When someone consistently idealizes others, calling them impressive, extraordinary, or remarkably confident, they may be projecting their own unclaimed strengths. Again, the key is emotional intensity. Whether the reaction is praise or condemnation, intense emotion signals the involvement of the shadow. The second character reveal Jung emphasized involves what could be described as mask maintenance, how someone behaves when their self-image is threatened. Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, but most people devote enormous energy to maintaining who they think they're supposed to be. This identity maintenance requires constant vigilance. When someone's performance-based persona is challenged, their real personality surfaces. To identify this reveal, observe how someone responds when their abilities are questioned, when they're criticized, or when they make an unexpected mistake. Do they respond defensively? Do they lash out? Do they shift blame? Or do they take a moment to reflect and reply from a place of sincerity? The answer exposes their authentic level of self-awareness and integration. Consider Sarah, a marketing director known for her poised and steady behavior. She has built her professional reputation around always being composed. But during an important client presentation, the client questioned the validity of her team's strategy. In that instant, Sarah's facade wavered. Her voice sharpened, her shoulders tightened, and she attempted to redirect responsibility onto her team. The persona she had carefully crafted dissolved under stress, revealing deeper insecurities and reactive tendencies that were usually hidden. Jung would argue that Sarah's reaction under pressure reveals far more about her actual character than the countless instances in which she appeared calm. The moment of vulnerability exposed her unresolved issues and her reluctance to experience the discomfort of criticism. Jung believed that the unwillingness to experience legitimate emotional pain leads to psychological distortion. Sarah's refusal to sit with discomfort drove her into patterns of defensiveness and blame. These moments of mask maintenance breakdown don't only appear during high-stakes situations. They show up in ordinary daily interactions. Delays, interruptions, or unexpected inconveniences often trigger micro-reactions that reveal authentic states of mind. Tone shifts, subtle gestures, fleeting expressions, or changes in posture provide glimpses beneath the surface. Jung understood that genuine character resides in these unguarded moments. The most psychologically integrated individuals, those Jung considered individuated, show harmony between their public persona and their private reactions. Their outward identity aligns with their inner world because they have spent time acknowledging and accepting their full range of qualities. They no longer need a mask to hide behind. Jung's insights work because the psyche operates like a complex system with conscious and unconscious processes interacting continuously. The shadow projection phenomenon occurs because the unconscious mind does not differentiate clearly between the self and the other when dealing with repressed content. When someone reacts strongly to another person, it may be because the other person symbolizes something unresolved within themselves. The unconscious uses projection mapping as a way of processing unintegrated traits. This is why observing judgments and emotionally charged reactions becomes such a powerful way to recognize someone's deeper patterns. People reveal more through what they can't control than through the traits they proudly perform. The unconscious expresses itself through reactions, tensions, irritations, admiration, envy, and defensiveness. Signals that bypass conscious filtering. Jung believed that true psychological growth requires facing the shadow directly. He saw the shadow not as something negative, but as a part of the psyche holding vital energy, creativity, and undiscovered potential. He wrote repeatedly that what we deny within ourselves becomes the very force that manipulates us from the background. Bringing these hidden traits into awareness strengthens the whole personality and reduces the need for projection onto others. Understanding mask maintenance also helps you see how much energy people expend maintaining their personas. When someone's sense of identity depends heavily on how they appear to others, any challenge to that appearance can trigger intense reactions. Defensive behavior often signals that the persona is fragile or overly idealized. By observing how someone responds when they feel exposed or corrected, you see how secure or insecure their inner world is. In daily life, these two psychological indicators work together. Shadow projection reveals the traits people disown, and mask maintenance shows how strongly they cling to their constructed identities. The people who respond to challenge with curiosity instead of defensiveness tend to have integrated shadows. They are more capable of self-reflection, humility, and honesty because they have spent time accepting the parts of themselves they once rejected. These principles apply equally to self-understanding. When you notice who you judge harshly, you gain insight into the parts of yourself that you may have neglected or suppressed. When you observe how you react when your image is challenged, you learn how tightly you hold onto your persona. Jung believed that awareness of these dynamics is essential for personal transformation. By recognizing projections and noticing persona fractures, you gradually move toward living as your authentic self rather than as a performance. Jung's framework helps explain why relationships change when people grow. As individuals integrate their shadow and reduce reliance on their persona, they become less reactive, less defensive, and more aligned with their genuine values. Interactions become clearer and less burdened by unconscious dynamics. Jung compared the meeting of two personalities to the contact of chemical substances. If there's any real reaction, both participants are transformed. This transformation requires that each person approaches relationships with awareness of their own psychological patterns. Shadow mapping and mask maintenance are powerful tools not just for understanding others, but also for understanding yourself. They highlight the moments when inner conflicts surface, offering opportunities to see what lies beneath the mask. Jung believed the journey toward self-knowledge is challenging but liberating. Through these observations, you begin to notice both the projections you cast outward and the reactions that arise when your self-image feels threatened. In doing so, you take the first steps toward a more honest and complete understanding of who you are. It directs internal conflicts outward onto other people, making those buried tensions visible, interpretable, and ultimately workable. The intensity of someone's criticism always mirrors the intensity of their internal conflict with that very trait. This is why individuals who feel genuinely secure in a particular area rarely criticize others harshly for shortcomings related to that same area. A person who is truly confident has no impulse to belittle someone else's self-doubt. Someone who is authentically accomplished doesn't feel threatened by another person's ambition or progress. Jung wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people about one, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself. When a person frequently criticizes others, especially with heavy emotion, They are expressing an inner sense of psychological isolation, a separation from the parts of themselves that they have pushed away or disowned. Their judgments reveal a hidden loneliness that comes from disconnecting from their own unacknowledged qualities. The second reveal, which involves persona breakdown, operates because sustaining a constructed image demands tremendous psychological energy. Jung referred to this as ego maintenance, and he recognized that this system becomes delicate, even brittle, under stress. When a person's outward identity is challenged or destabilized, their deeper defense structures snap into place. These defenses reveal their fundamental psychological patterns more accurately than their controlled behavior ever could. In the moment of a persona breach, watch what emerges. Do they attack, a sign of underlying aggression or long-held resentment? Do they withdraw abruptly, revealing avoidance patterns shaped by fear or vulnerability? Do they redirect responsibility onto others, revealing tendencies towards self-protection through dishonesty or blame-shifting? Or do they breathe, reflect, and attempt to understand, signaling psychological maturity and integration? Jung wrote, "A man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them." The way a person handles criticism, especially unexpected criticism, exposes whether they have learned to integrate their challenging emotions or whether they are still ruled by them. This is why observing someone under pressure often reveals truths that calm, prepared moments never could. Stress unmasks reality. When someone's mental defenses activate, their authentic patterns rise to the surface. Judgments can be filtered, smiles can be rehearsed, responses can be rehearsed or polished, but instinctive reactions bypass the rehearsed persona, letting the psyche express itself more freely. Jung's aim in character assessment was never to expose flaws for the sake of humiliation or superiority. Rather, he sought to understand the whole person, their struggles, protections, strengths, and potential, so that real connection could occur, not superficial interaction. Beyond these first two primary reveals exists a third pattern that forms naturally when the first two interact. This can be called the integration test, the observation of how someone responds when their own shadow material is reflected back to them gently and thoughtfully. This test becomes the ultimate assessment of character because it reveals whether someone is capable of awareness, growth, and maturation, or whether they remain trapped in reactive, unconscious cycles. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." The integration test puts that principle into real-world use. Here's how it works. When you notice someone projecting their shadow onto another person, you reflect the pattern back to them, not through accusation, but through curiosity. You might say something like, "It sounds like people who brag really bother you. Have you ever felt the desire to express your achievements but held yourself back?" The intention is not confrontation, it is gentle reflection. What happens next reveals their character on a deeper level than months of passive observation could. It shows their relationship with their own unconscious material, whether they defend themselves fiercely, deny their internal world, or explore their emotions with honesty. Returning to David, who dislikes Marcus for being inauthentic, imagine asking him whether he ever wishes he could be more socially comfortable or charismatic. David may respond in one of two ways. Response 1. The defensive pattern. "Are you implying I'm fake like Marcus? That's absurd. I'm honest, unlike him. I don't manipulate people to get ahead." This reaction demonstrates that David is defending himself not just against you, but against a facet of himself he refuses to acknowledge. His growth is limited by his inability to look inward. This rigid defense signals that he is imprisoned by his own shadow. Response 2, the integrative pattern. "Actually, yeah, Maybe I do sometimes wish I were better with people. I admire Marcus's ease with clients, even though it irritates me. Maybe I'm jealous of something I've avoided developing. This response reveals depth, self-awareness, and psychological flexibility. He can hold the complexity of feelings, irritation, admiration, envy, and explore the connection among them. Jung wrote, "The most intense conflicts, if overcome, leave behind a sense of security and calm that is not easily disturbed." People capable of this type of introspection gain strength from confronting their contradictions. They become more grounded and more real because awareness allows them to integrate traits previously pushed into the darkness. The integration test also exposes 3 distinct character patterns that Jung frequently described. The first is the unconscious type, who has no awareness of their projections and responds with shock or anger when confronted with them. They are ruled by automatic reactions and often confused about why people respond to them negatively. The second category is the aware but defended type. These individuals understand their tendencies intellectually but cannot incorporate this understanding emotionally. They may say things like, "I know I judge people," yet they remain unable to explore what lies beneath that judgment. Their insight is partial. They can see the pattern but cannot feel it. The third category is the integrated type. These individuals approach their projections with curiosity. They ask themselves, "What is this reaction trying to teach me about myself?" Jung considered these people conscious, not flawless, but awake to their internal processes. They can navigate relationships, growth, and conflict with authenticity because they have stopped fighting their own nature. This capacity for integration predicts how someone will deal with emotional intimacy, criticism, personal growth, and long-term relationships. Individuals who cannot integrate their shadow repeat their behavioral cycles endlessly, blaming circumstances, partners, or colleagues for what originates inside themselves. But those who learn to work with their projections consciously move toward what Jung called individuation, becoming whole, authentic, and deeply self-aware. Applying Jung's framework in daily life requires compassion. Jung wrote, "Where love reigns, there is no will to power. And where the will to power dominates, love is absent." The goal of understanding these psychological reveals is not to manipulate others or evaluate them with superiority, but to relate more deeply and communicate more clearly. The purpose is connection, not control. In romantic relationships, shadow mapping helps you listen differently. Pay attention to what your partner says about their past relationships, frustrations with co-workers, or traits they repeatedly call out in others. If they consistently complain about selfish behavior, it may reflect their own discomfort with asking for what they need. If they criticize people who express vulnerability, they may be suppressing their own longing for emotional safety. Instead of using this information against them, use it to nurture understanding. You might say, "It sounds like it really bothers you when people act needy. Do you ever feel like you have needs you're afraid to express?" This creates emotional openness rather than defensiveness, building deeper trust. In professional settings, persona breakdown observation helps you assess leadership potential, collaboration style, and emotional maturity. Pay attention to how colleagues handle feedback or unexpected obstacles. Some people become reactive, some become passive, some become analytical, and some become integrative. Their response style reveals how well they manage pressure and how aligned their persona is with their authentic character. Jung wrote, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases." Understanding a person's pattern helps you communicate with them in ways that suit their psychological architecture rather than imposing your own expectations onto them. These insights are equally valuable in parenting. When a teenager says their friends are fake or attention-seeking instead of agreeing or disagreeing, help them explore what this judgment reveals about their own anxieties around acceptance and belonging. By guiding them towards self-awareness, you help them build emotional intelligence rather than harsh judgment. And remember, this entire framework operates as a mirror. Every time you react strongly to someone else's behavior, you have an opportunity to uncover something unprocessed within yourself. Jung wrote, "Everyone you meet knows something you don't know but need to know." Your own reactions can become educators if you approach them with honesty. To deepen this process, try a shadow journal for the next week. Whenever someone irritates you, write down the exact behavior that triggered you. Then ask yourself, where does this trait live in me? What part of me feels threatened by this? What might this reaction be pointing toward? Avoid self-condemnation. Curiosity is enough. Jung wrote, "The acceptance of oneself is the essence of the whole moral problem and the epitome of a whole outlook on life." Accepting your shadow is not self-indulgent. It is the root of psychological health and maturity. A powerful exercise involves pausing when you feel defensive. Before responding, ask yourself, what if there is truth in this? What might this reveal about my growth areas? This small shift opens the door to conscious evolution rather than unconscious repetition. Jung believed that the purpose of psychological development is not to become flawless, but to become conscious. The goal is not to destroy the shadow, but to work with it constructively rather than being controlled by it in secret. The path forward is not perfection, it is awareness, honesty, and acceptance. The ability to read character can deepen human connection, but without self-awareness, it can quietly turn into a form of psychological harm. When people learn Jungian concepts, shadow, projection, persona, archetypes, some begin using that knowledge not to understand others but to expose them. These are the people who become what I call shadow hunters, individuals who detect vulnerabilities and then poke at them under the pretense of being insightful. Jung would have considered this a misuse of psychology because he believed that the moment insight is used for superiority or manipulation, it becomes spiritually corrupting. He warned repeatedly that people will do almost anything to avoid facing their own unconscious, and one of the easiest ways to avoid that confrontation is to analyze others endlessly while avoiding self-reflection. This misuse often begins subtly. One of the first warning signs is a sense of superiority. When understanding another person makes you feel elevated, smarter, more perceptive, somehow above them, it indicates that you're using psychological insight as a way to inflate your ego. True understanding should make you more humble because you see how universal these patterns are, how every defense and shadow belongs to the human condition. Another warning sign is using insight manipulatively. If you learn someone's insecurities and then shape your behavior or words to trigger certain reactions or steer them in certain directions, you've crossed into using psychology for control. Jung considered this an ethically dangerous approach because it transforms the unconscious into a tool of domination. Judgmental thinking is another indicator. If psychological frameworks make you more critical instead of more compassionate, something has gone wrong. When judgment increases, it usually means your shadow is projecting onto someone else. You begin seeing others' faults with clarity, but ignore your own, and that leads to the most telling sign. You analyze others, but rarely, if ever, turn this insight inward. When your attention is constantly directed outward, dissecting motives, diagnosing patterns, interpreting behaviors, but you avoid subjecting yourself to the same scrutiny, psychology has become a defense mechanism rather than a path to self-awareness. Jung described this as getting lost in the unconscious, where the thrill of analysis replaces authentic human connection. A healthier approach requires what Jung called an ethical relationship to the unconscious, a commitment to using psychological understanding in service of empathy, growth, and genuine connection. Everyone you meet is carrying invisible wounds, and their defenses, whether arrogance, withdrawal, or people-pleasing, are attempts to cope with pain. When you recognize this, character assessment becomes a way to see humanity more clearly, not more harshly. When you observe someone's persona or shadow patterns, you're witnessing their attempts to protect themselves from fear, rejection, or past trauma. Insight becomes a way to soften your heart instead of sharpening your judgments. One of the most transformative aspects of using Jung's framework in a healthy way is the mirror effect. This effect reveals that every person you analyze is also showing you something about yourself. Jung said that clarity comes not from looking outward, but inward, and that the act of reading others inevitably turns into reading your own psyche. The people who trigger your strongest reactions are often pointing you toward your own unresolved issues. If someone's arrogance irritates you, it's helpful to ask whether you have your own complicated relationship with confidence. If someone's neediness exhausts you, consider whether you suppress your own needs or feel shame around expressing them. The emotional charge is the clue. Irritation, dislike, admiration, or fascination are all mirrors. The mirror effect also appears through positive projection. When you admire someone deeply for their creativity, courage, confidence, or authenticity, it may be because those qualities exist within you, but haven't been fully developed or claimed. You project your potential onto them. Seeing this possibility in someone else is often the first step toward recognizing it in yourself. Over time, as you become more skilled at observing patterns in others, you start noticing the same patterns in yourself. If you can see someone else's persona crack under pressure, you'll begin noticing the moments when your own mask slips. If you can see someone else's shadow flare up in an argument, you'll start catching your own shadow in real time. This becomes a feedback loop of self-awareness that gradually deepens your understanding of human nature. I experienced this personally when working with someone who constantly sought reassurance. Their behavior annoyed me, and I labeled them as insecure and attention-seeking. But when I applied Jung's framework honestly, I had to confront the fact that their behavior triggered me because it reflected something I didn't want to acknowledge. I had my own subtle ways of seeking validation, ways that were less obvious but still present. My irritation was really directed at a part of myself I hadn't accepted. Jung's insights forced me to see that my criticism of them was a form of self-criticism I hadn't yet recognized. This is the essence of the mirror effect. It doesn't just show you what you are, it shows you what you might become. Jung emphasized that every trait you can perceive in others exists within you as potential. That doesn't mean everyone has the same personality or the same tendencies, but you share the same fundamental psychological structures. Recognition becomes a form of expansion. Understanding others becomes a way of mapping your own inner world. Sometimes this recognition goes even deeper. Jung observed that when you meet certain people, they feel strangely familiar, even if you've never met before. This is archetypal resonance. Your inner patterns match theirs in a way that creates instant understanding or instant conflict. These interactions can feel fated or uncanny because they touch deep psychological structures. As you grow in self-awareness, you begin to notice these archetypal patterns more clearly, which allows you to respond with wisdom rather than instinct. All of this gradually leads toward becoming what Jung described as a conscious individual. This type of person sees psychological patterns without falling into judgment or manipulation. Instead of reacting to someone's projection, they recognize it for what it is, a sign of that person's inner struggle. Instead of taking persona breakdowns personally, they understand that these defensive reactions aren't expressions of someone's true self. Conscious individuals become able to hold the paradoxes of human nature. Someone can be both defensive and sincere, both anxious and courageous, both masked and authentic. They understand that people are rarely one thing, and that complexity is the nature of our inner lives. As you grow in this direction, conflict changes. Interactions that once felt threatening become opportunities to understand yourself better. Difficult people become teachers. Your reactions turn into data about your internal landscape. But Jung warned that this growth can bring a period of loneliness. When you start seeing patterns clearly, you may feel temporarily disconnected from those who are still operating unconsciously. The old ways of bonding, complaining about others, participating in collective judgments, avoiding difficult truths, no longer feel meaningful. You begin seeking connection based on authenticity rather than shared projections. This transition can be isolating at first, but it ultimately leads to deeper, more genuine relationships. Over time, this kind of psychological clarity makes relationships feel more creative, spontaneous, and alive. When you're no longer acting from your own unconscious defenses, you bring playfulness and openness into your connections. Jung believed that creativity emerges from an inner necessity, and that conscious relationships have this same quality. They feel less scripted, more exploratory, more capable of growth. The real purpose of reading character in Jung's view is not to become a master interpreter of human behavior, but to become more deeply human yourself. As you observe the shadows, projections, and defenses in others, you naturally begin to see your own more clearly. Jung wrote that a person's task is to become aware of the unconscious material pressing for recognition. When you approach character assessment with humility and empathy, every insight becomes an invitation to awaken, to grow, and to become more whole. This awareness creates choice. You can respond consciously instead of reacting unconsciously. Integration unfolds gradually through small moments when you notice yourself projecting, recognize your persona defenses, and choose a deliberate response rather than an automatic reaction. Jung wrote, "We don't really heal anything, we simply let it go." Letting go of unconscious patterns allows your authentic character to emerge, even though the process is rarely comfortable. Jung also warned, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Seeing your own psychological patterns clearly requires facing aspects of yourself you have long avoided, yet this discomfort is a productive pain that leads to growth rather than stagnation. The integration process often follows predictable stages. Initially, you can perceive patterns in others while remaining blind to your own. You may see everyone else's projections, but not recognize your own. Gradually, you begin identifying your patterns intellectually, though emotionally, you may still become caught in them. You might think, "I'm projecting right now," yet feel fully justified in your judgment. The next stage is developing the ability to catch yourself in real time and select different responses. This creates a space between trigger and reaction, allowing conscious choice instead of reflexive behavior. Eventually, you start responding to other people's unconscious patterns with awareness instead of reactivity. Instead of feeling defensive when someone projects onto you, you can recognize their internal struggle and respond with boundaries and compassion. Finally, you begin to embody what Jung called the transcendent function, the capacity to hold opposing psychological forces in tension until something new emerges. You become comfortable with paradox, uncertainty, and complexity. Jung wrote, "The difference between a good life and a bad life is how well you walk through the fire." The fire represents the inevitable conflicts, projections, and persona breakdowns that define human relationships. Walking consciously through these experiences transforms destructive forces into opportunities for growth. This transformation is gradual and ongoing. Consciousness is not a destination, but a practice. Every moment of awareness, each decision to respond rather than react, each choice to observe clearly rather than judge harshly, brings you closer to authentic selfhood. As you integrate Jung's insights about character and consciousness, your awareness begins to ripple outward, affecting those around you. Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. When you stop participating in unconscious patterns, when you resist the pull of others' projections or the temptation to respond defensively to persona cracks, you create space for new types of interaction." People sense this shift even if they cannot articulate it. They may remark that you seem calmer, more grounded, or more genuine. What they are noticing is your reduced reactivity to their unconscious material. You are no longer feeding their projections or reinforcing their defenses. This creates what can be described as consciousness contagion. Your presence and awareness invite others into higher consciousness, not through preaching or instruction, but through embodiment. Jung wrote, "You are what you do, not what you say you will do." Your authentic presence communicates more effectively than any words could. Some will resist this shift. Individuals who rely on projections or are attached to their persona defenses may escalate them in response, attempting to pull you back into familiar patterns. Others will be drawn toward your conscious presence, sensing the possibility of more authentic connection. Over time, this ripple effect can extend beyond personal relationships into families, workplaces, and communities. When one person ceases projecting their shadow and owns their authentic reactions, it gives others permission to do the same. Jung believed that the development of individual consciousness was a cornerstone for collective transformation. He wrote, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, the world will tell you." Knowing your authentic self, including your shadow and the character beneath your persona, renders you resilient to external projections and positions you as a model for others seeking authenticity. Your willingness to face your own shadow encourages others to confront theirs. Your ability to shed persona masks creates psychological safety, allowing others to risk authenticity. This is the deeper purpose of character assessment, not to judge or manipulate, but to understand human patterns deeply enough that you can respond consciously rather than react unconsciously. Jung's enduring legacy is less about the techniques he developed and more about his invitation to consciousness. Each person who chooses awareness over reactivity, authenticity over performance, and understanding over judgment contributes to the evolution of collective human consciousness. The two things Jung identified that reveal true character, shadow projections and persona breakdowns, are not merely tools to read others. They function as mirrors reflecting your journey toward self-awareness and authenticity. Jung wrote, "To be normal is the ultimate aim of the unsuccessful. But you're not here to be normal. You're here to be conscious, to see clearly, to understand deeply, and to connect authentically with the human beings around you." Every moment you catch yourself judging someone harshly offers an opportunity to examine your own shadow. Every time you notice someone's mask cracking under pressure, you can study your own persona defenses. Every instance in which you resist weaponizing psychological insight is a choice to prioritize consciousness over unconscious reaction. Jung understood that the pursuit of authentic selfhood is the most important work an individual can undertake, not only for personal growth, but for collective human evolution. Your willingness to confront your shadow, to lower your persona defenses, and to respond consciously rather than react unconsciously produces ripples that extend far beyond your individual life. In doing so, you become what Jung called a culture creator, a person who models new possibilities for human relationships and the evolution of consciousness. The two reveals are not the end of character assessment. They mark the beginning of character development, your own development, and your contribution to the consciousness of everyone you encounter. By observing shadow projections and persona breakdowns, and by applying the same awareness to yourself, you engage in continuous self-refinement. The ultimate character you cultivate is not someone else's. It is your own. This path toward consciousness transforms how you move through the world. Conflicts become opportunities for understanding, challenges become invitations to grow, and relationships become laboratories for authentic human connection. Your ability to integrate these principles transforms ordinary interactions into moments of awareness, guiding both yourself and others toward deeper psychological freedom. Each insight, each conscious response, each recognition of your own shadow and persona patterns reinforces the evolution of your authentic self, creating an ever-expanding field of clarity, connection, and conscious presence.